Alright, hi, this is Ace Trainer M, and I'm gonna start off this series, you could say, with talking about one of my favorite game genres in the entire industry, and that would be the RPG genre. You might not know me, but I love myself some good RPG. I play classic RPGs, I play JRPGs, I really try to expand all these, different things and experiment with them and stuff like that. I also want to focus on creating RPGs in the future because it's really a unique game experience for me at least. And I've noticed something in this genre, specifically the JRPGs or Japanese role-playing games, that they're declining. Like, it's pretty obvious, but there are less good JRPGs being made, and there are less people wanting to play them these days. And at least in the past, this was not the case. Like, as much as you would like, your Fallouts or stuff like that, it would not compare to something like Final Fantasy VII. I think they came out around the same time. But yeah, like, you notice that today you barely see any popular JRPGs. Like, at the moment, the most popular one is probably Final Fantasy, still. And, at least the last installment wasn't very, successful in terms of, games and, Final Fantasy games in general. It received poor, reviews in both, cases. And I thought I'd talk a bit today about, why I think this is happening, or what can we do to fix this, because I love this genre and I really don't want to see it go away. So I thought I'd start by saying that, of course, like, at a certain part it's because the developers try less. Like, with all due respect, the stories are just not like what they used to be. The narrative, I mean, like, you can't really put it on the same level as previous installments or games. Especially, like, for example, Final Fantasy, as I said again. Like, Final Fantasy VII is a game that I would play only for the story, because it's just that amazing. The universe, the narrative, the characters, they're all so great. And Final Fantasy XIII, its story is, not as good. But I digress. So, what I'm trying to say is that in no way is what I'm going to suggest right now going to be, like, the only cause for this. Of course, it's also, like, the more obvious thing, which is that developers are just not doing as great of a job. But what I think is that is really dragging down the JRPG genre is the combat system. I know a lot of you might find that really weird, but just hear me out. Even back in the day with classic JRPGs, you had the turn-based battle system, which even then was a bit dated. Like, it wasn't the most exciting thing. It wasn't necessarily bad. It fit for the time. It worked because these games could deliver on narrative and story and feel a lot more than other games could. For example, like, I know I'm using Final Fantasy a lot, but I think it's just a great example for how JRPGs could be good or bad. So, for example, Final Fantasy 1 on the NES, Nintendo Entertainment System, it was a marvelous JRPG. It had turn-based combat, which was rather simple, but it was really fun. Like, honestly, story-wise, it also wasn't the most amazing thing, but considering, they had other games on the NES, which basically, for example, Super Mario Brothers, which you basically don't have much of a story, at least in the game. Like, the most amount of dialogue you get is Toadstool popping up here and there saying, thanks for saving me, but the princess is in another castle. Yeah, so, games like Final Fantasy managed to deliver a lot more, which, even back in the day, it wasn't that amazing, but, it was still a lot better than most other games out there, compared to, in narrative standpoint. But, what happened was that games just got better. Like, we got better tech, we could store more data on a disk, and different genres were created. And the situation we're in right now is that games, like even games which don't focus on narrative still can pull off a really good narrative. You can see it with all sorts of platformers or open world games or perhaps even puzzle games, which don't exactly focus on narrative, but they still have a really, really good one. And it's because nothing is stopping them from having a really good one. Like, you'd find it even in fighting games, like, I don't know, Tekken, Street Fighter. You'd have the same amount of narrative or story and backstory to characters, like even more than old JRPGs. So this thing which JRPGs used to shine in, all other genres can also do. Like, I'm not saying you can do it as good, but I'm saying that it's certainly not like the only thing you come to. Like, when you play JRPG, it's mostly for the narrative, but you could also play a different game and come for the same reason or different reason, and it might serve the narrative just as well. And that's why I think it's falling short, because the combat system is really dragging down the rest of the JRPG format. Like, the narrative is good, but it needs something else. I think a really good example for how strong a good battle system is I think, again, I'm gonna go Square Enix, Squaresoft, Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. For example, Final Fantasy 7 Kingdom Hearts 1, which were released, like, it's still a pretty big time difference in video game standards, but 5 years isn't that much. So I think 5-10 years, not sure, never mind. So Final Fantasy VII used a turn-based battle system, and it had an amazing story. The characters were so cool, and the world it created was so immersive, and back in the time, the graphics were also really visually nice. The combat system also wasn't like just normal turn-based. It was more like it had strategy turn-based features, but it also focused on time, which made it a bit more interesting. But like, I realized about halfway through playing it that I'm not playing this for that because I find that game that fun. I am playing it because I'm really invested in the narrative, and that's it. And a game like Kingdom Hearts, it's very similar. Like, you got the same type of really interesting, awesome characters, lots of world to explore, really compelling and deep story. But the only key difference is that Kingdom Hearts uses a different battle system. And if you pay attention, that's really the only difference. Like, because they're both owned by the same company, like Square Enix, both of them use a lot of the same features, like the same kind of spells or leveling up systems or stuff like that. And honestly, Kingdom Hearts, at least to me, is just way more amazing. I'd probably put it around my top games of all time, because it's so stellar on so many levels. And that's really the key difference. I'm not saying that in order for JRPGs to succeed, they have to have a good combat system, and that's all they need. Cause I'm not saying that. That's ridiculous. But what I am saying is that the JRPG genre can't just rely on its narrative anymore. It needs to polish up its other mechanics, whether it be gameplay or unique features which it'll create. I would love seeing that. And also, it shouldn't firmly put itself as a different type of genre. Like, the main difference between JRPGs and normal RPGs is that JRPGs focus more on creating different characters and creating a setting, and really just telling you the narrative, the story of it. While a normal RPG is more about giving you control, the creation of a character, and basically playing around in the world and letting you interact with it to your liking, which is is more like empowerment rather than narrative. I'm not saying the story is dull or anything. I'm just saying that's usually what the key aspect is. And what this means is that it's very hard for a JRPG to use different mechanics or stuff like that, because if your main point is narrative or story, you need to find something which fits with your story or narrative, and that's very hard to do. So as for a solution to the problem, really there isn't one, but what developers in the JRPG community need to do is, rather than just think of how do I make a good story, like a good narrative, how do I make compelling characters, a nice setting, what they should think about is, how can I add mechanics to the game which I'm now creating, like, which would be fun on their own, and also make the narrative a lot stronger. I'm looking at this from the standpoint that, Kingdom Hearts, well, it was, an RPG, a pretty dark RPG, considering it had, like, Disney characters. It was also really light-hearted and fun. It was really, like, full of the sense of amazement and adventure, and it was also developed this way, because the developer of Kingdom Hearts, like, the main producer of it, said that it was deeply inspired by Mario 64, which, as we all know, is, like, pretty much one of the greatest games of all time when it comes to exploration and adventure and stuff like that. So he really managed to do it well, and its combat system is really improves the experience, because it allows traveling around in big, large areas and finding new things, and you're not necessarily forced to fight something or forced to defeat your enemy. Not to mention that a lot of battles require a lot more movement and stuff, which requires a lot more interaction with the things around you, which makes you more involved in the world and world exploring. So, that's just a little thing, and I know I've used Square Enix a lot in this video. I just think, when you go to RPGs, that's one of the best places to look throughout history. But yeah, so look for a system which works well with your, with what you're trying to pull. That's what I'm saying. If you want to pull a great narrative, look for a certain combat system, or look for a certain ally system, or leveling up system, anything really. Rather than just be there because other games are doing it, or because it's tradition, that it's actually something that really makes the core aspect in your game shine even better. Alright, so I rambled on for quite a bit in this video. I doubt a lot of people would actually listen through the whole thing. If you did, good job. I hope you can put up with me. So thank you for watching. Like and comment. I would appreciate it if you comment. Not necessarily, telling me, actually commenting about my video, but start your own discussions about your opinion, or about what you think really happens with the JRPG genre, or what can affect it. Because, these videos are just, a little thoughts which you guys could, you could also think of and say, this is interesting, here's something which I suggest, or I think. So if I manage to make at least one of you do it, then my work here is done. So that's great. So anyway, this is Ace Trainer M. Thank you for listening. I'll see you guys next time.